I don't think there's a better time than now for me to step aside.
Tonight, Manitoba's Premier is calling it quits on Wednesday this week.
Take a moment right now to talk about those folks outside.
Anger against Justin Trudeau grows online and in person.
I'm like, well, I quilt, so why not ask other quilters if they'll send me blocks, which is what you can see back here.
And quilters create beautiful gifts for residential school survivors. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Manitoba officially says goodbye to Premier Brian Pallister this week after 5 years as Premier. Reporter Michelle Carlinzig takes us through the rocky months leading up to his resignation.
Embattled Premier Brian Pallister's leadership will officially come to an end this Wednesday. He announced his departure in July, but hadn't said exactly when he'd step aside.
I don't think there's a better time than now for me to step aside. So I make that decision today. I believe both decisions are the right ones, then and now. But now it's time to move on and spend some time with the people that I have missed over many years, including my family and friends.
Pallister's last months as Premier weren't short of scandals, especially when it came to Indigenous issues. First, his response to the toppling of Queen statues on Canada Day was seen as historically inaccurate.
The people who came here to this country before it was a country and since didn't come here to destroy anything. They came here to build.
9 days later, Pallister's Indigenous Relations Minister Eileen Clark resigned, stating her voice was not heard from leadership and that damaging language will not lead to reconciliation. Roughly a week later, Alan Lajamodier was sworn in as the new Indigenous Minister. And at his first speech in the position, he defended residential school architects, saying they had good intentions. Opposition leader Wab Kinew stepped in to interrupt.
And I cannot accept you saying what you just said about residential schools. It was the express intent of residential schools to kill the Indian in the child.
Indigenous leaders from across the province celebrated Pallister's resignation, saying the damage he caused to Manitoba's Indigenous community was irreversible with him in office. Among the handful of people looking to lead the Manitoba Progressive Conservatives is a Métis woman. Shelley Glover is a former police officer and former Conservative MP. She's up against two others so far, current MLAs Heather Stephenson and Shannon Martin. The PC party will select its new leader on October 30th. Michelle Carlinzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
September 30th will be the first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and all federally regulated workplaces are going to have that day off to reflect on the legacy of residential schools. But in the province of Alberta, September 30th is going to be just another work day. Tamara Pimentel explains.
In Calgary, plans for a permanent memorial honoring residential school children and survivors is underway, a step toward reconciliation. But when Alberta announced it will not consider the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as a statutory holiday, advocate Nicole Johnston says it's a step backwards.
I wouldn't want people to take that day as a vacation day or day off to do, what they think they should be doing. I think they should be taking that day to educate themselves, take their families to go sit with elders.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission called for the creation of a holiday as one of its 94 calls to action. Federal employees and people working in federally regulated workplaces like banks have the day off. All provincial buildings in Alberta will lower their flags, but it's up to business owners to offer the day off. Secretary for the Minister of Indigenous Relations told media the province is encouraging all Albertans to reflect on the legacy of residential schools every day. But in a statement, Regional Chief Marlene Poitras called on the province to acknowledge September 30th as a holiday. This refusal to formally acknowledge the September 30th federal holiday within Alberta flies in the face of reconciliation with First Nations and shows a disdain and lack of care or respect for Alberta's Indigenous population. Johnston says aside from the holiday, justice still needs to be served in order to heal.
I'm more for the justice part than anything right now. I'm more for holding those ones accountable for their actions.
Unlike Alberta, British Columbia will mark the 30th as a day of commemoration, and other provinces are still deciding.
Reconciliation isn't just for a group of people to do. It's a responsibility for everybody here in Canada.
Johnson says on that day, workshops and a memorial powwow are planned for Calgarians to reflect on the effects of residential school. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
Vanessa Grenier wanted to do something nice for residential school survivors, and now hundreds of people are helping her across the country and all over the world, helping survivors receive a homemade gift. APTN's Priscilla Wolf has that story.
Vanessa Grenier wanted to help residential school survivors when the news of unmarked graves began to be uncovered.
I currently live in Timmins, Ontario, and I'm an Indigenous mother, and I'm from Missinabie Cree First Nation.
Her passion has always been quilting, so she took to social media to ask for help.
I'm like, well, I quilt, so why not ask other quilters if they'll send me blocks, which is what you can see back here, is blocks made by different people. And I kind of put feelers out on Facebook and requested for 16.5-inch blocks for everyone just to send me one. And it just took off. It just went from 5 people in my group to now we have over 2,000 people in the group. I wanted to make 18 quilts, and well, I've made almost 200. We've done almost 200.
At first, her goal was to make and send out 18 quilts, but that number has ballooned since June.
We have given out 117 quilts, and we have 75 names of recipients wishing to receive a quilt.
She set some deadlines and started to connect people with survivors.
We do have some hard deadlines, like for single, like it's just growing like huge and a little overwhelming. I live in a very small home with my 2 young children, and I work full time, and I'm a single mom. So it kind of went a little bit too big, too quick. So single blocks, you have until the Canadian Thanksgiving to send quilt tops. You have till Halloween, and then come November 1st, then I just want to be more of an administrative role and just give you addresses to survivors for people to send quilts to.
People who want to sew a quilt or receive one can join her Facebook group, Quilts for Survivors. Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Absolutely love that story. Well, we want to hear from you. What do you think of the effort to get quilts to the residential school survivors? If you're looking for how to do it, you can share with us on our social media. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News and join the conversation and see all of our latest stories. Well, we need to take a break, but when we come back, anger on the campaign trail. What does it mean for the candidates? Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, anger against Justin Trudeau is growing in person and online, and many of the protests involve anti-COVID-19 vaccinations and lockdowns. Trudeau addressed that on his campaign's Facebook page, posted Friday.
Take a moment right now to talk about those folks outside, as there have been at a number of stops along this campaign, who are protesting masks, who are protesting vaccines, who are angry about public health measures like lockdowns. That's their choice. That's a choice that they are expressing loudly and clearly. But it's not just a choice that they're making for themselves. It's a choice they're imposing on others.
A Saturday stop was cancelled due to safety concerns that prompted other party leaders like Erin O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh to denounce the violence and call for safety at all campaign events. Well, companies and investors have begun walking away from big pipeline projects that have faced public backlash in recent years, and insurance companies have a big role to play in completing pipelines. The Trans Mountain Pipeline in British Columbia has a deadline looming. Earlier, I spoke with Kaya George of Indigenous Climate Action. So Kaya, you recently penned an opinion piece in the Toronto Star with the headline, "Canada's Trans Mountain Pipeline is genocide against my people." Why is it climate suicide for insurance companies? Can you tell us about the role that insurance companies are playing in the pipeline project?
Yes. So currently, my nation, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, has been fighting against the Trans Mountain Pipeline for over a decade, and as we've seen in a lot of reports recently, and as we've seen all around us, there's been a lot of changes happening in our environment, and a lot of changes to our land, to our water, and to the animals. And as this continues, they still are pushing the pipeline to go through our traditional territories. And it's climate suicide because as we're seeing all these issues, and as there's these goals of having lower emissions, they're trying to push a pipeline through, and it makes no sense at this time. And these insurance companies are backing that. Without these insurance companies, the pipeline wouldn't be able to be built. So they're having a huge role in this climate catastrophe right now of building the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
We've seen companies and investors moving away from the oil pipelines. That's why the federal government here in Canada purchased Trans Mountain. At the end of the month, it's a big deal for insuring Trans Mountain. What could happen?
Yes. So as we've seen in the past years, the Trans Mountain Pipeline was once formerly owned by Kinder Morgan, and they've seen there's just too much risk. There's too much public pushback. We've been a huge amount of the city and a huge amount of people are just strongly against it. So they didn't see it in their best interest. And so Canada purchased the pipeline. And we've seen many instances of this, of companies seeing that it's just no longer worth it. There's so much pushback. And at the end of this month, on the 31st, very soon, it's a deadline for insurers to renew their contract. And recently, a couple months ago, we seen that Canada agreed to hide the names of the insurers, but we see from the year before who's still insuring. And so unless these insurance companies publicly declare that they're not insuring, or they don't plan on insuring the Trans Mountain Pipeline, we're going to assume that they still are.
Right. In the piece in the Toronto Star, you'd said your family you've spent half your life, along with your family, fighting against Trans Mountain Pipeline. Do you feel that there's been a shift at all among the public, that people are starting to view this differently, or is it still the same uphill battle for you guys?
I've seen a massive shift in these past 10 years. I remember when the rallies, it was just like a couple of us in the beginning. Now, in these past couple of years, it's been thousands, tens of thousands of people coming to the streets. I've seen it a lot in the youth. It's been a really huge generational shift. Before, in the beginning, it was a lot of sort of elderly kind of people really interested. Now, it's a ton of people, ton of teenagers, and people in their early 20s, stepping up, and even kids now. So I've seen that generational shift of climate consciousness, and it just keeps growing and growing.
Well, we have a federal election ongoing here in Canada, and it's certainly climate change is the top priority among Canadians who were polled. So I guess we will see where that takes us when we go to the polls September 20th here in Canada. Thank you so much, Kaya, for taking time out of your day to join us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we will watch how that unfolds tomorrow with those insurance companies. Well, when it comes to protecting water, the smallest community in the Northwest Territories is at the front lines. Their approach to addressing pressures of climate change involve partnerships. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs has that story.
Sometimes we'll catch over 60 fish we have to sample one day.
Malayan Simba is part of a solution, easing the minds of community members in the Decho region of the Northwest Territories, who rely on traditional foods.
We test for mercury, and in the water sampling we do the pH. We test for any contaminants in the water. We ask the community which is important for us, where it's important to take the water samples and that. For us it's because of Cameron Hills, and we're downstream from Cameron Hills. So
Simba is from Kagitu First Nation, Kakiza, and host community of a water stewardship gathering. They're sharing what they know about protecting water with Northern youth and climate researchers.
The most challenging part, I would say, would be capacity, like having like lots of people. Like here, probably more people than at home right now, you know, like just, but we're so small, we make things happen.
Tarek Chico, a youth from Kikiza, is also part of a solution. He's been helping build this camp for the First Nation. Knowing to protect the water and land, you need to have access to it.
A nice cook shack where everybody could sit inside and have meals together. Nice cabins where you could just stay. And I just went say 3 kilometers down the river and the moose is right here. And the cabins are right here, so.
This moose Chico shot this morning is proof the land provides.
You know, me and Dawson could try to go out and bring something back for the community. Since we're so small, we could easily hand out meat and share it. And it's good to have all this land because you have the healthy. If you keep this land healthy, then you have healthy animals, healthy moose, and this.
As you practice more, it gets better.
This is Ruby Simba's classroom today. She believes Kikiza has been successful in protecting water because they've upheld their teachings.
On the land means wherever you're practicing your knowledge and your experiences, anything that you learn from your people growing up. If I learn how to make dry meat, I can make dry meat right in my house, right in my backyard, in my smokehouse. I'm on the land.
Simba also thanks past generations who, in the early 1970s, stood up to the proposal of a nearby dam going in.
They know exactly what is in store for us. We can't see it, but they passed on, but this is what we're going to have.
The camp falls within nearly 10,000 square kilometers of protected lands.
I think all the areas that are protected, I think there's place names for these things. And in certain areas like here, there's areas where people live. And from here, there's trails that go out to different areas where people hunt. They have snare lines and things like that. And the river here behind me is one of the major spawning areas for pickerel, whitefish, and things like that.
Chief Lloyd Chico says it hasn't been exactly easy to adapt to modern styles of land use planning, which include other Indigenous communities working to settle the Decho process, land claim, and self-government agreement.
One of the things the elders struggled with was they want so much areas protected, but they can't have that, so they have to compromise which areas should be and shouldn't be protected. But in the long run, I think some areas need to be out there for some of the younger people to gain their income and that kind of stuff. And
Charlotte Mort Jacobs, APTN National News, Kikiza.
Now they're all hungry for caribou. Well, we need to take a break, but when we come back, a new book by author Clayton Thomas Mueller. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Ernest Turner captured a photo of this bear chasing after a crow near Mississippi Cree Nation in central Manitoba. Don't know how that ended. Keep those photos coming. You can email them to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we got sunshine and 27 for Fredericton, 17 and showers for St. John's. Kuujjuaq 14 and showers, same with Inukjuak. Sunshine and 20 degrees for Seattle, 26 and sunny for Montreal. Ottawa 25 and sunshine, Toronto 27 and sunny. Kapuskasing and Timmins and Wawa all 20 degrees and sunny. 25 for Puckatawagan and Thompson, 23 and sunshine for Norway House. 25 and sunny for Winnipeg and Dauphin and Brandon. Cloud with a chance of showers for Swift Current, 27 degrees, 25 and a chance of showers for Yorkton. 21 and showers for La Ronge, 25 and sunshine for Stony Rapids. 20 and showers for Fort Chip, 15 and showers for High Level. 17 with a mix of sun and cloud for Edmonton, 26 and sunny in Medicine Hat. 17 and showers for Kamloops, 18 for Vancouver and Victoria and rain there. Sunshine and 16 for Prince Rupert, 17 and cloud for Prince George. Old Crow, cloud and 11 degrees, 20 and sunny for Dawson City. Norman Wells, a mix of sun and cloud and 17. Wauatee, showers and 18. 15 and a mix of sun and cloud for Fort McPherson. Paulatuk, 15 and rain. 16 and showers for Baker Lake. New Yacht, 6 and showers. 4 and cloud for Igloolik. Pangerton, 6 and cloudy. A care home on a First Nation in Manitoba is dealing with an outbreak of COVID-19 Delta variant cases. 23 cases have been identified at the George Guimond Care Centre on Saugeen First Nation. Of those cases, 19 are residents, with the majority of residents and staff fully vaccinated. Chief Derek Henderson is unsure how this outbreak occurred, but he says that the symptoms have so far been mild among those who have received both vaccines. Well, Winnipeg environmental activist Clayton Thomas Mueller has released a new memoir. Life in the City of Dirty Water ties together his stories of survival. With more, here's Daryl Stranger.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but it's a story of my life, but it's a shared experience. I think that many Native people, have gone through.
Clayton Thomas Mueller grew up in Winnipeg's inner city. He faced family violence, poverty, and racism, eventually ending up in juvenile detention. Those stories make up his new book.
It's a collection of stories basically about what it means and what it feels like to grow up Indigenous, in an inner city. Some of the shared experiences I think that my generation and subsequent generations have had as a result of the legacy of Canada's Indian residential school policy of genocide. And, it's also a story about healing.
He hopes the book can help non-Indigenous people understand the hardships some Indigenous people like him face.
So there's a lot of things people can do, and I hope that Life in the City of Dirty Water inspires both Native and non-Native people to come together and understand each other maybe a little bit more, have a little bit more empathy, a little more kindness, and most importantly, that it activates people and normalizes conversations about some pretty tough topics.
The book is being released in the thick of an election campaign, and he hopes it can put pressure on those in power to make changes.
There's a lot of contradictions that continue to exist that that need to be undone, and I hope that this memoir can help advance that discourse, put pressure on decision makers, empower people.
He credits his connection to his culture with turning his life around. Life in the City of Dirty Water can be purchased wherever books are sold, as well as online. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, that is your Monday news to kick off the week. We're always thankful to have you join us here. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Dennis Ward will be back in the seat tomorrow. Have a great night.